So Karri, thanks so much for joining us. I really appreciate it. So the tool that you've made, I believe, is going to be the next widely used project management tool because it's so functional and so easy. It reminds me of the functionality of Jira, but much easier to use, so people can start using it in much smaller teams. And then once they start using it, they're not going to stop. So I think it's going to be the tool that's sort of going to take over the landscape. That being said, in a small team, rather than people recreating the product management process, we should learn from the best. We should learn from you. You made the tool, so you know how to use it better than anyone else. And you're doing great product management, and you're a fairly small team, you're 10 people. So can you please onboard me as if I'm a new engineer as to what the Linear's product management process is and how to use the tool to do so? And if you could please share screen, that'd be great.
Yeah, sure. Let's see. Yeah, I have a little presentation, so we can start with that, and then we can go into the tool itself.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Yeah. So Linear. So Linear is this a new we're creating this new issue tracker tool. We talk about the issue tracking, but in the end, I think it's about managing projects and managing product development. But we wanted to kind of start from the core need that companies have, which is like a software company, you need to track bugs and you need to track issues, but obviously also need to do other things too. But that's kind of the core need. I think there is a lot of other project management tools, but we kind of don't think they're really good for software development. Software development is more complicated than some other projects. And also they're not it's not just the complexity, it's also that those tools are not created for that use case. They're just created general, you can manage anything. And we just believe that it's always better to create more we want to be the best tool for this specific purpose to help the software companies. And the kind of the way we think about how Linear got born was we all of us founders and a lot of people in the team, we work on a lot of different startups and also growth companies and late stage companies, and it's always felt there's this kind of frustration, or you're trying to build something and in the end, initially you maybe don't need any kind of tool to do this. You just work together and figure things out. But as the team grows, eventually you will need some kind of tool because there's too many people and it's hard to coordinate if you don't have any kind of shared system or shared way of doing things. But we also felt all of the tools that are on the market, they just felt you're kind of fighting against them. They don't feel they're actually supporting your workflow, or they didn't feel they're slow, or they just feel that it's not really helping me to build something. It's more I'm just reporting stuff I'm doing to someone else somewhere so they can get some kind of charge out of it or something. So it didn't feel it's really helping me or our team to build something, but it's more a reporting tool for some kind of management purpose. The way I think I like to think about building products is there's the way I think about the craft and the impact. And there's I think sometimes companies maybe focus too much on the impact side of things, that they start measuring things too early or measuring too much. Whereas I think it is important that you should focus on things that move the needle and make the product better. But then there's also qualities that are not necessarily measurable. So you should still kind of think about that. And it's kind of hard to if you always just talk about the metrics, then you never talk about the craft, or you don't think about it. So what I see on the craft side is just when you use product, is the quality you see, the interactions, how they feel, the design and the brand, any kind of ease of use or clarity, or just even small things animations can feel this is actually a crafted product versus this is just a product that's solving my problem, and maybe it's fine, but it solves the problem, but it's not making me feel anything, or it's not excited. So I don't think it's a working product, but it's not a great product.
Yeah.
But then if you only focus on that, it doesn't work either. Yeah, you can make a really nice weather app or something like, but it's in the end, like the impact is not going to be substantial. It's not really solving necessary any like a unique need or solving something like worthwhile. So that's kind of like how we think about it. And the reason why I say this, because like I think this is like explaining like some of the reasons why some things are in the tool or some things that are in our like in the principles or in the linear method itself. And I think like you're probably like familiar with this kind of saying, like the score takes care of itself. Like I think this is more like a leadership management book, but I think it's kind of like the same. Like we try to think about the same things. Like sometimes teams go a little bit overboard with trying to manage every single thing in their product element. They try to like make like estimate like everything perfectly and like focus on the metrics, like how well, like how many points they get done, and like try to write the most like elaborate issues and descriptions. And like I think like sometimes people get too much, like think too much about the process or like the way of working, that they don't really focus on like what is in the end important, which is like the output is important. And like if you build a team that they value the right things, then they should produce the right kind of results. So like something like if a quality is a problem in a company, go ahead.
Yeah, that's awesome. We completely agree. And we've probably already been erring on the side of measuring too much. So this is a great reminder for us as well.
Yeah, so I think like if the quality is a problem or like performance is a problem in a company, I think it's like sometimes people try to fix it like, let's put more QA, like let's try to like capture that when things break, but then it's kind of like, it's already kind of too late. You're trying to fix something that already happened. And like, instead, like you should try to find like, okay, what is in the team or in the culture or something that is not allowing us to create quality or focus on the performance. And usually it's like there's too many deadlines, or people are too rushed, or people just are too stressed out, or people don't know that they should be focusing on quality. I think a lot of companies don't tell people, like I think the leaders of the company don't tell people like, yes, we do value quality, and it in some cases it's like it's okay to spend more time to do that. But I think sometimes companies just like say like, yes, this needs to be done on this day, and then they kind of also say that like, we don't care how it's done, we just care it is done. So I think like there's obviously it's important to get things done too, but I think there's some kind of balance.
Fantastic. I'm soaking up this because we're making all these mistakes right now.
Some of the principles we have, like just like linear method is also something like we're still working on. So there might be changes or additions, and like we don't have all the answers, but we're trying to like work on it, that figure out like how can we help more companies to build quality software. And we also think about this like magical software, like how can we make more people feel like build products that people really are excited about. And this is more like this, some of these principles are like kind of almost like too much maybe for us, like how we are building linear, but maybe it also applies to other companies. But like in our case, it's like, I think like built for the creators means that like we're trying to build for the end user. Like sometimes companies get confused, like who are they building to? Like sometimes like in this our field, I think a lot of, or our domain, a lot of products get built for the buyer, for the management, but not for the people who actually use the product. And and then like that's great for sales, but in the end, like the people who use the product, then they will have a like it doesn't necessarily match their needs, or it's like makes them unhappy in general.
Makes complete sense.
And we also believe it's like there's this. I think like there's two ways to maybe like build software. One is like you build more opinionated software, or you build very kind of flexible software. And I don't say like it's a bad thing to build. Like I think it's like a choice you have to make. We choose to make linear like more opinionated because we feel like, because we are addressing a specific use case, which is like companies building software. We think that in order to like build the best product for them, we have to have some kind of specific way for them to do it and follow, rather than like do whatever you want. And we kind of saw that in companies too, when they let their teams often figure out, they say to their teams, like, let's just figure out how do you do things. And then let the teams don't really know, like I didn't know, like we would just kind of talk about it for a few hours, like let's do it this way, and then let's see how it goes. And then we would do it and no one's really happy about it. So I think we felt like it's important to be opinionated to actually provide some kind of way to do things.
And segue, Karri, given that your software is opinionated, is this a good time for us to segue into showing us what that opinion is and having me be an employee who's onboarding for the first time, and like tactical, like let's open up the linear app and both show us what happens in and not in the linear app and how you do it?
Yeah, sure.
Great. Thank you.
Let me switch. Okay. So
excellent.
Here's the app. Let's switch to something else.
And this is, and maybe we could go from like idea that you have about a feature or a polish that you want to do on the app to how it goes from you interacting with a customer, a user, and realizing that something needs to be changed in the software, to it getting to an engineer who's excited and motivated to work on that polish.
Yeah. So one of the things, like we do have this specific team. So I'm just like first from there about the interface, so you can just get grounded. So I mean, so most of the navigation happens on here on the left side. So you can have there's different views, like your inbox and issues assigned to you, and views, which is like more like you can create custom views, the roadmap. And then you have like different teams you can be part of. There's also more teams that these are like basically the workspaces for your whole company. So there could be a lot of teams here, but you don't really care about them, or you're not working with them. So you can kind of like hide them. But it's there that like if you do want to need to go see something, then it is available. So one of the things, like this is an area we're still kind of working on how do we do this better, but we do have this like a feature request team. We do chat with we have a Slack group with the customers and users, and people tweet to us and people send us emails. People can also send us feedback through this form. So there's this like a quick form that you can fill in and send us a feedback, and we will read it. And then Erin actually like does most of this work and like kind of category, like looks at the feedback and the issues, like with different topics. We collect like topics, not like specific requests, more like, I don't know, people have general feedback about the filters. So we kind of like collect it in this, like, especially like if we're actively working on some area, then we try to like collect it here. And this gets kind of like collected in different like comments. So there's a topic, but then there's comments from different users, like what they want to see. And this is more like, we don't necessarily do, maybe Erin, you can also like jump in, like how do you do this? But I think like in some ways this is like a, more like a library for us. We don't necessarily have to do anything with this. It's kind of there to, like, Erin can like ping me or someone else in the team that like, hey, like there's this interesting feedback about this, and then I can see it. And then when we are building something, I can just quickly like, I can maybe, I can just like search here either, like, I just like, okay, like what are people saying? Like, are there some more stuff about the filters that people are asking about? And then I can quickly, same with all the issues, I can quickly kind of like, if I hit the space bar, I can just kind of hover on things and see like what the issue is about. But Erin, do you have any other comments on how to do this?
Yeah, I think generally the way it starts is that we collect general feedback, just because one of the goals of the user feedback is it's usually not what the request they have is like with their context of knowledge, right? So if we just go by their request, it's not necessarily doing a service to them. So it'll start out as general feedback, and then once we see a feature that's been requested a lot, or a problem area that's been requested a lot, then I might break it down into a separate issue. So that's why you see both. And then, yeah, it's really helpful because sometimes we've definitely reached out to people as we're building something or after we've built a first version to get feedback. We can look and see who were the people who requested it. I think what the most important thing about this is that we built this after having it in documents elsewhere, because this is where our engineers are. This is where the people building it are. And so, we have the help modal in the app because that's where our users are, and you want to have the fastest. It might be counterintuitive, like don't make it so easy to have users contact you, you'll be inundated. But the thing is, like, there's nothing more precious than getting that feedback in those first moments that the user is there, in those first, and like it's so raw and unfiltered because they're not losing the context.
Yeah, totally agree.
Yeah,
totally
and
agree.
the feedback, the engineering team, everyone kind of sees when I add these in, and they have super quick access to it. So if they're thinking about a feature, they just go in themselves and get it.
Right on. I love it. Thank you, Aaron. Really appreciate that. And then I'm going to be moving fast here only because I'm trying to get like the entire linear product management process done in the space of this call. So now we see how you collect feedback. And then we also would love to look at projects and how you decide how you put them into the roadmap, how you prioritize the roadmap, how you have enough information in each project so that people know what they're going to be working on. Yes. Awesome.
Yeah, so this is actually like features not released. Like we will so there might be bugs with this still, but and then there will be a call actually this week on Thursday about this, so it's not like secret or anything, but it's more like we haven't really like
it looks great.
So the way we like in our company, this might depend on different companies, how like what is the time frame you want to do things. We like to think about like quarters, even though like we're like a small startup. We still think like it's, especially because like we are remote and distributed and we do want to build like high quality stuff. We feel like we need to like a little bit plan ahead and think about like what is like a reasonable, like how I don't know how many days or weeks we want to use on the project. And like generally we try to like keep the projects like few weeks or a couple weeks or 4 weeks, not like 6 months. I think 6 months project in small startups can be really troublesome, like problematic. Like if something like one is like for 6 months you don't know if this thing will be even useful, or like something happens in the 6 months and then you realize this is no longer even like useful thing to do, or just the project fails and you didn't like it was harder than you expected and then you kind of wasted 6 months. And like so we try to like keep the project like generally like few weeks, but then we still think about the quarter like there's some kind of theme for the quarter. So so we have like this kind of milestones that we create, and generally like how we do it, and like the company founders and the leadership, we look at just like, okay, like what is the next stage we need to get to? And like the way we've been operating our company, we've been trying to focus on like one of the segments at a time. So like let's start with the early stage companies or startups, because that's the segment we can serve today and we know, and we have ways to like reach out to them. And then we kind of like, let's push that and like try to figure out what they need and like what are the channels they're in, or like what do they care about, and then do that. But then like this year would be more like focusing on what is the next segment, which is like more like slightly like mid-level startups that are like growing companies. And we have some customers like Loom and some other ones like Retool that are in that range, that they're like billion-dollar companies. And so like we look at the like, okay, this quarter we want to like get more of these kind of customers, and then we're like, okay, what is holding them back? Like why don't we have them yet already? What would they need? Like what would make them exciting? So that creates the theme for the quarter, which is like this is grow up is the theme. So like we as a company and as a product need to grow up to meet the next segment. And then we don't actually do this in Linear yet. The way we do the first draft of the roadmap, we use some kind of document editor. It could be Notion or it could be like Google.
This is where we'd love to see. We'd love to see this part. How you actually do that. Can you please bring us to your Notion or Google Doc page?
Yeah, just a sec.
And then how that links into these projects.
Yeah. Maybe I'll just share my screen so I can.
And as you're doing that, it looks like you have you put on due dates, but in reading the method before, we thought it was a Kanban no deadline process. And we don't have an opinion whether each one, but it looks like that you do put dates on things.
Yeah, we cannot so in this timeline view, it's there has to be some kind of dates.
Right.
But before we didn't necessarily put dates. We usually do think about the scope of the project, but we don't necessarily put a date until we know that what the scope is and what is the hoped timeline. But we don't feel like we need to pressure people yeah, we really need to hit this timeline. It's more this is the plan, and does this plan make sense? And if it doesn't make if something happens, then we can change the plan.
Perfect.
But here is yeah, we want to, this is kind of just generally what do we want to achieve on this quarter. And then we just do a bullet point list, and there could be different ways. All of us might have our own lists. We think about these things. We notice that this have been a problem. We feel this could be really useful to do, but we try to think about the prioritization from the lens of the theme. Is this actually important to do now? Does this somehow help our goals for this quarter? So this is a very quick list, and then we kind of just try to, and we work, we also do this with the team. We just do a first pass with the leadership, but then we kind of jump over to the team. Okay, do you think this is right? Is there other things we should do? What do they see from their perspective? And then we feel we kind of try to see from a resourcing perspective, is this reasonable? It's probably always too much. We notice that we try to put too much here, which is fine, but we just have the expectation we're probably not going to get to all of this. So we try to prioritize the list in some kind of order. These are important to do now because it is the highest, the most critical thing, or it's something we just worked on this, so it's kind of easy to continue from that, or some kind of reasoning.
Awesome. And then do you click through and do you open each a page and they have more detailed specs inside them? Or is this just, okay.
So for example, well, maybe this is not the good example, but so one of the things is well, if we think about larger companies, they probably already use some tool and they might have a lot of information. So we wanted to build better importers because of that reason. We start with this changelog. So we write this changelog, which is we publish it on the app and on the website. These are the new features. But we start the project brief with the changelog to kind of remind people what is the whole purpose of this project is create some kind of value to the user.
Is the equivalent of the Amazon press release written before. Yeah. Yep. Perfect. Makes total sense.
But it's a couple of paragraphs. We don't it doesn't have to be long, but it's, and then there's some kind of usually a why, why are we doing this? What is the rationale? We then list out the things that we know from the feedback, or otherwise, so these are the current problems. We might list ideas, there could be other things we could do. There could be a specific goal and or multiple goals. We do sometimes or often try to now have some kind of while I said metrics, we don't only want to think about metrics. We do want to capture metrics just to understand what is happening. So we want to think about we want to capture metrics on these importers to understand if people are using it and which people what are they using actually. And then the way we also do this briefs is the whole roadmap or all the projects, we try to give the ownership to the project team. So we specify a team this person works on it. This person is the lead, and it could be anyone. It could be the engineer, designer, or whoever. The point is just the lead is the person that needs to kick off the project, and they are responsible communicating the project or making sure that things happen. But they don't have to be a manager or some other specific role. And then the team together writes this document as a start, like starts the project basically by writing this, so we can get some kind of clarity for the whole team. Because sometimes I've noticed a lot of companies, the most misalignment comes from like different expectations people have. Like, I don't know, people are like, yes, let's build this feature. And then, I don't know, 2 months later, someone's like, this is not the feature I thought this would be. Like, it's missing this and this and this. And then like, by that time, it's kind of late. So we want to like, yeah.
And Karri, I think you already said this, but just to clarify. So when you come up with like, okay, here's this feature that we put in the product roadmap, we prioritized it. You, Karri, don't write out the spec. You say, who wants to grab it? And then people say, I'm excited about that. And you select a project lead for that project. And that project lead writes up all the specs. So it takes the burden off of you to write everything. And then it also makes it that they're bought in because they're doing the write-up. But then I imagine you get to see this before they actually start burning lots of hours working on it to confirm, yes, that is the correct thing, that like I agree with the write-up that you've done. Is that right?
Yeah. And just to clarify more, it's like, yeah, like usually it's the whole team that, like the project team that writes this, like the lead can write it or they can also get help from the team. And yeah, the point is that why we do it this way is like, we believe that like people who built the feature should have the ownership of the feature. And if they have the ownership of the feature, we believe that the quality of the work will be better. And also like me as a CEO or a founder, like I don't know everything. Like I don't like every single feature. I don't necessarily know exactly what needs to be built. I just know like this needs to be built. But like I think if the team is focused on this specific problem, they will come up with better ideas. And we want to give them the ownership.
So Karri, it sounds like there's no product manager at Linear that the role, because the primary role of product manager is to write the product specs and, take from the customers and translate it and write it out so the engineers can go build it. And you're basically have deconstructed that role so that anyone who takes on, whoever the project leader are, different projects, does the product management role for that specific project. Is that right? And if that is, I love it.
Yeah, and I would again say like it's not necessarily like the lead does it either. It's like more like the whole team. It's kind of doing it. The lead is just responsible for making sure it gets done. Yeah.
But the whole team writes it. I freaking love it. And then it sounds like you're the one prioritizing where in the product roadmap these things sit. But once someone takes a project, then they write up how it's going to get done and what it's actually going to be.
Yeah.
Perfect. Love it. Amazing. That was our primary question.
Yeah.
We now have another question though, and that is all this content of the product description or product specs. How does that get into Linear? How can we see it in Linear?
Yeah, it's something like we want to have like a better solution in the future. But like, for example, I don't know, there's this like project front integration. So I can like open that. And there's actually this like, now I'm on the project page and there's the sidebar and we don't actually have the link here, but I could like link this document here. And then it's like here that it's also.
And is that a hyperlink? Could we then open that up?
Yeah.
Perfect. That's what we couldn't figure out how to do. Now we know how to do it. Thank you. We put it in the description bar, which wasn't a great place to put it.
Yeah, so this is like tied to the project now, and then like you can always, people can find it here, and we do want to like build a better solution for this, but it is for now it's like this. And you can add like other things. You could add like a designs, or you could have research documents or whatever. So this is like just like whatever is like related to this project.
Yes, perfect. And by the way, is this a new part of the new feature that isn't released yet, or is this part of the existing tool that's already released? That little linkable, the link section.
Yeah, it is part of the existing.
Okay, great. And just so you know where we put it, we ended up editing description, putting it into the link into description, but it wasn't linkable.
Yeah.
And then so in order to see it, people had to edit it, the project name, and then up top, and then like copy and paste the Notion link. This is a much better way to do it. Thank you. All right, I'm super happy now. I think I get how you create the product specs and get them into the roadmap so that people can see them. This is phenomenal. Now, you also, we're using this just for the engineering team, but you're using this for non-engineering teams. Can you briefly show us how you do that?
Yeah, I mean, like we don't have a lot of, like most of our team is engineering or design, so we don't have a lot of other, like, but
Yeah.
we do know like from other companies that they do have more, like they might have their marketing team or hiring team, or sometimes like we do have like our recruiter was using it for like basically like not for managing like candidates, but more like, okay, like we should work on this, I don't know, like setting up, like when she joined, like we created a project for her, like, okay, set up all these systems
Yeah.
with us, and then we can track it that way. We do use it for content. So like Erin and I, as like, we want to like write about different stuff about the linear method or about the customers or about other things. So we kind of collect the work here, and then we can, I don't know if there's something that could be interesting. I mean, there might be not anything like, let's see if there's any completed.
I think one key thing is that on the team, generally, most people write their own issues. That's a big one, and that's a big practice that we also find other linear users do. And I think it changes how you approach your project. I think that's a core practice. So once you have that spec up, people in the team will create their own issues. It's also, Karri can share more, but it's also why we can have these like shorter issues, because you don't really need to add so much description if you're writing your own issue as opposed to telling someone else what to do.
That's exactly right. It's like the director writing the screenplay doesn't have the screenplay doesn't have to have all the notes, because the director has them, understands them. Makes complete sense.
Yeah, and like continuing from the roadmap. So we add the projects, and once we have the spec up, we can add the projects to the linear, or like we already added, then like make the first issue is like write the spec and assign the lead for that, and then they can figure it out how they want to. But then like often the team gets together, and then we just like create all the things what we need to do. For example, I think so for example, I need to design this stuff, so I often like create this like one issue, which then like I think like, yeah, I need to build this, design this like configuration UI. I'm not sure yet what it will be. So then like I start with just exploring it, and then I will add more like specific pages, like this specific view, and then I can like create a specific issue for that, and then I can kind of like work on that as a designer. And then engineers can do the same, that they might like start with like, okay, let's figure out like what are the big pieces, and then start breaking it down to smaller pieces as we know what they are. And we think it's also, that's why like if you look at this graph, this gray line shows the scope. So you kind of start with like very little things, and then you kind of like gradually add more as you make more progress. So in some ways you're not likely making progress because you're just also adding more stuff, but you kind of see like things are happening, more things are added. This red line is like it went over the initial timeline, like the initial due date, which we were fine, and then actually the scope went down because we just canceled some things. Like, okay, at this point we're like, well, we need to ship this, so we can't like add all of the stuff we initially planned to do, so let's just cut it now and work on like polish it up and fix everything what's left, and then just like cancel the rest for now, because we just felt like it's more important to get this done now than complete everything we planned for.
Yeah, it makes complete sense. And Karri, what does a team look like at Linear? You mentioned a product designer, you mentioned an engineer. Is it multiple engineers? Is it one engineer? What does that look like?
Yeah, we usually, it depends, like we're a small team, so, and we also like distribute it between US and Europe, so there's a little bit like constraints. Like one is like we generally want to make the project team to be in the same time zone, like so Europe or US. So it's like the project usually is either US or European side. And then we do try to always have at least like 2 people on the project. That we realize at some point that like one person projects are really challenging, because like if you're just working on this alone, even if you can do it, by yourself, it can be just really like sometimes you get stuck and you just want to talk with someone about it, and like you don't really build that kind of understanding alone necessarily. So that's why we try to like have, I don't know, like let's see, like, well, let's use the importer project again. So on this project we had like 2 engineers and me as a designer. So depends on, sometimes if the feature is very technical, we don't need like a designer on it, but most user-facing features will need a designer on it. And then sometimes we have like Erin, who is also part of the team. Like she might not be part of it full time, but she might be like part of it. Like especially if there's some like content that needs to be thought out or written, or just generally like something more like customer facing.
Makes sense. Makes complete sense. And I know you are a very small team. The last time we talked, you were 10 people. I don't know where you are now.
Like 10 still.
10, perfect, good. Then that was your goal. Your goal was to stay hyper small, which I think is a phenomenal goal. Are you the product designer for everything, or is there another?
No, there's also Adrian. So
okay, so there's
also hired a third. Yeah.
Two. I'm sorry. There's 2 or 3. You said.
Yeah, no, we just hired last week 1 person, but he hasn't joined yet. So there's 2.
Okay, great. And then how many engineers among that 10?
I think 6.
Okay, great. So it's 6 engineers, 2 product designers, Erin, and 1 other person.
Yeah, like recruiter.
Fantastic, perfect. That makes complete sense, and that to me is the ideal team. So I encourage you to stay at that size, and we're going to try to do the same. I think that those are all the questions that I had, Karri. You nailed it. This is awesome. We now have a much better sense of, we're going to copy this, directly. There's no need to reinvent the wheel. And this though feels like we probably got level 1, and we're probably going to have another round of questions at some point. And if we wanted to pay to go to Linear University, where do we sign up for Linear University?
Yeah, you can sign up here, but yeah, we need to think about it. Like that's a good idea. Like we don't have it currently, so but it's been something we've been thinking about. Like how could we better, like what kind of content we should do, and like is there like a course we could make with someone? So that's like maybe something will happen in the future, but so far we haven't started on it.
Perfect. And I would say this course doesn't need to be long. You probably do it with 1 person. We'll be your guinea pig if you want it. And you just record you teaching 1 person, just like you're doing now. This is phase 1. There'd be another phase 2. And then that's probably enough to start. And then you could do if you want to make it more complicated, you could, but you probably don't have to. And my guess is that your product is already so good that people are going to use it anyway. But you may have some drop off with people who start to use it and then can't figure it out. And the course will just mean your conversion rates will go from whatever they are now to even closer to 100% with the course material to make people expert users.
Yeah, and we hear it sometimes like from customers. They do reach out to us with a lot of questions, like just like even like similar that you had, and also like how do I set up the teams, and like especially if you're a larger company, it's a little more challenging to like figure out like how, because the product is kind of similar, somewhat different. So it's not all the concepts don't translate exactly. So it's
right.
definitely like we could be more helpful for those people.
Right on. We just created part 1 of your MVP, and so we'll be your guinea pig for part 2. And yeah, I encourage you to make the course as well. But again, there's no rush. The product speaks for itself, which is amazing.
Yeah, and I would say like one thing we didn't look at was the cycle. So we do have this like 1 week, like we use 1 week cycles, and the idea is just like you have like basically with the team you can talk about like, okay, what are we gonna do next week, and just kind of like it's just like a cadence. Like sometimes there's a lot of things to do. So the cycle is the point of it is just to make sure that you're not trying to do too many things, and like staying focused. And like if things change over the week, like during the week, then it's fine, but like you should also try to avoid it. That like not like if you keep like changing direction all the time, then you might not be able to make as much progress. So with the cycle, you can also see day to day like how it's going, and like we don't necessarily care about like how many points we're making, but it's more like, are we just making progress, and did something change during the week? Like did we just change a lot of things, or whatever happened? And also if you do some kind of checking with the team, like I can quickly like click on the name of the person and see like, okay, they're working on this thing, and then I can go to the next person and like the next person. So it's like something you need to turn on in the settings. It's not automatically turn on.
Great. How do we turn that on?
So yeah, like I recommend exploring the settings because there's a lot of things here. But for the cycles, you need to go to your teams and go to that specific team, and then you can like turn on the cycles, and then you can specify like the settings for it, and they run automatically week to week, or like whatever time frame you set. We made it automatic so people don't have to think about it, so they just kind of run on a more like a routine. And the other thing I would recommend is like for developers, the GitHub integration, or GitLab, whatever you use, is really useful, because what you can do with that is you can connect the linear with your GitHub repo, and then you can also automate things like which ones? So here it's like when a pull request is opened, you can specify like move the issue to in progress state, and then when it's on a review state, move it to this in review state, and when it's merged, like move it to done. So this way, when you work on an issue, like let's say like
this frankly seems to me like the killer feature of this tool.
Yeah. So let's say I'm gonna work on this issue. I can just like hit the Command K, or I can use this menu, but I can just say like copy branch name, and it copies this branch name. It also moves the issue in progress already, because I started working on it, and then you just paste this branch name to your whatever version control thing, or like an editor if you use the version control to that. And then when you push the pull request, Linear will automatically link the issue to it. So you can see here, like this issue is like linked to this GitHub pull request, and the state is like in a review. So once the pull request gets approved, then this will automatically be done, and then you don't have to like manually change it.
Fantastic, love it. Yeah, that part we figured out, and we love it. Yeah, it's pretty clear Linear University needs to be created. Even either YouTube videos or an interactive course, or there's so much functionality here. And again, it is an opinionated system, and that's the beauty of it. And we, the rest of the world, we're just open, Karri. We just want to learn from you. Tell us what to do, and we'll do it. But yeah, I'm going to make a strong request for Linear University.
Yeah, and that's something like Erin has been working on this onboarding videos, but I think it's also like maybe we can think about like, yeah, like more like a university or like a course where you go through things more like in depth. Yeah, it's a good idea.
Fantastic. This is phenomenal. I want to honor our end time, which is now. Karri and Erin, thank you both so much for this. This is exactly what we were looking for. This is going to rocket our team ahead, but we're going to share it with the world. And I imagine it's going to rocket many teams ahead.
Yeah. Yeah, thanks.
Awesome.
Thanks so much for setting work. I mean, like you also helped with your questions and kind of like directing this. So thanks for the help.
You got it. Awesome.